Hey, everybody. Thanks for stopping by Out on a Limb with Gabby Allen. Today I have Leslie Budewitz with me, and I'm so very excited that she's here. We're going to be talking all kinds of fun stuff. As always, at the end, if there are any questions that you have for either one of us, you're more than welcome to put them into the comments section, and I will share them with Leslie to make sure that if you want to learn something and we know it, we're going to share it with you. So let's get ready with, the one only question that I ask. And Leslie, that is, what is it that you do and how do you do it?
Gabby, thanks for inviting me today. It's always a pleasure to hang out with another writer and readers. I have to say, I really, really miss book people. It's wonderful to be able to visit with you from the little corner of the world that I live in, which is northwestern Montana, near Glacier National Park.
Okay.
I'm sitting in a corner of my office with the computer and a glass of water and a cup of coffee and pretending that we are all gathered somewhere together in a bookstore or a library. It's really been a great thing to have access to Zoom and FaceTime and other ways for us to get together. That way we can meet with friends in all corners of the earth. So the question is, what do I do and how do I do it? Well, mostly I am a cozy mystery writer, and lately I have ventured into suspense. And I have to confess that I talk with my hands. So if my hand all of a sudden flies into the air, that's it. It's not that I'm practicing karate on the side.
So you're in really good company, because I tend to do this sometimes. And I'm just like, wow, there's more hand gestures than there are words coming out of your mouth. So completely understood. No worries.
So as I said, I live in northwestern Montana, and that is the setting for one of my series, the Food Lovers Village Mysteries, which are set in a fictional version of the town that I live in. I call it Jewel Bay because we're in the Northern Rockies, and there is an area of the Rockies near us called Jewel Basin. And the town that's my inspiration is on a little bay on a big lake. And so I call it Jewel Bay.
I love it.
And it really is a little gem of a town, both in real life and on the page. There are 6 books in that series. You can see as the Christmas cookie crumbles behind me. That's and maybe adorable. You can see, and I think they're backwards because of the Zoom thing, Carried to the Grave, which is the newest book in that series. And I will point out the teapot just because it's so much fun. The Agatha teapot sitting behind me.
I love it.
The Agatha Award for Best First Novel, which was for Death al Dente. And I have to say, this one is quite a wonderful teapot, black with the tea bag tag that's got the little red skull. I think you can see it. What I really, really want is one of the teapots from a previous year of Malice Domestic, where the Agathas are given, where the handle of the teapot is a pistol grip and the spout is a barrel. I mean, I don't want to be greedy and say, I want another Agatha teapot, but I want one of those.
Yeah, no, I understand.
For a mystery writer, that's pretty cool, don't you think?
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. I agree with that. I would like one.
And I hope you get one, because they make really great tea.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I also read another series called the Seattle Spice Shop Mysteries, set in Pike Place Market in Seattle, where my main character runs a spice shop in the market, not one of the real spice shops. As with my village in the Food Lovers Village Mysteries, I had to create my own spice shop so that I could kill people.
Right, as you do.
There are 5 in the series so far. You can see a salt and pepper behind me. That's the first. And I just turned in the 6th, which is scheduled for next summer.
Awesome.
And I think it will be called Peppermint Barked.
Ooh.
Well, my main character's name is Pepper. Because,
Okay.
She runs a spice shop.
Yes.
And then I'll mention my new venture, and that is I have ventured into suspense with Bitterroot Lake, and you can kind of see it behind me. So I'll hold up a copy rather than move
Oh,
my chair. You can
very
tell by the
nice.
cover that it's a little bit moodier, a little darker, not slasher dark,
Right.
but a little moodier. That's probably
Okay.
the best way to describe it. And I wrote that as Alicia Beckman because the publisher wanted to distinguish the moodier suspense novels from the lighter food-oriented cozy mysteries. It's an open secret.
Yeah.
I just have the one website, just have the one author photo,
Yeah.
which is fine because I just have the one author face. It's actually been a lot of fun to do something a little bit different.
So when you're talking about that it's moodier versus, so most cozy mystery has the amateur sleuth, and somehow they are either working with the police to serve the community, working against the police, even though they're not supposed to, or like they accidentally fall into it. So with your romances, is it still an amateur sleuth, or is it a more against them as a person mystery?
So you mentioned romance, and that's what you write, right?
Right.
On the other side of,
I can, yes.
Mystery. I don't venture into
Oh,
romance.
sorry, I meant suspense, not romantic suspense.
Yeah,
I apologize.
I know, it's just a misspeak there. That's fine. So let me come at that from a slightly different direction.
Okay.
And talk first about my theory of a cozy mystery.
Okay.
And why I think they're so wonderful for both readers and writers. And then I'll slide into suspense, and hopefully I won't get too off track. If I am, yank me back.
No worries.
My theory of the cozy mystery is that the heart of the cozy is community.
Yeah.
The main character is an amateur sleuth, usually a woman, not always,
right,
who runs a business or has some other occupation that puts her at the heart of the community, even if she is new in it. Sometimes she has lived in this place for a long time. Sometimes she has left and come back,
right,
as is the case with Erin Murphy, the main character in my Food Lovers Village mysteries. And that's my own story. I grew up in Montana, left for 15 years for college, law school, worked in Seattle for a few years, and then came back and found that the community had changed, and so had I, but we didn't necessarily expect that of each other.
Right.
And so with Erin's story, I am telling my own experience through the perspective of a much younger woman, because she's 32, I think, when she comes back. And I haven't seen 32 in this century. So
I honestly would not have guessed that, but okay, I'll take you at your word for it.
I've gotten to the point where I think of myself as her mother's age, even though when I started, I wasn't quite there.
That far
anyway,
along.
She has come back to this community, and she runs her family's market in the heart of the village.
Okay.
It is a local foods market in what was the original grocery in town back when town was much smaller. So that's one example of the character who grew up in this community and then comes back. In the Pike Place Market, in the Spice Shop mysteries, which are set at largely in Pike Place Market in Seattle, I've got the urban cozy. So I've got the small town, kind of semi-rural cozy, and the urban cozy. And there, Pepper, my main character, is a Seattle girl. She really never left. She's always lived in the city, except for one misguided year away. And she saw the error of her ways and came home, but she never expected to own a spice shop. So that's the big change in her life. When her life fell apart, she found herself, what happened to the poor girl she thought her husband, who was a Seattle police officer, was working late, taking a shift for a friend. So after work, and she was the HR manager at a huge Seattle law firm. After work, she went out for drinks with a couple of friends and stumbled over her husband and a meter maid.
Oh no!
Enforcement officer, practically plugging each other. in the back corner of this restaurant. And
Yeah.
so there she was at 40, newly divorced, and then the law firm collapsed in scandal.
Right.
And she found herself buying the spice shop. She bought a loft downtown. We will just forget about the realities of home prices in Seattle in particular. And then she bought a spice shop, and wouldn't you if your life fell apart?
Why not?
So she is the poster child for life begins at 40.
Okay. I like it.
If the cliche fits, wear it, right?
Seriously, I'm so on to that.
So these two women are embodied different types of the amateur sleuth in the cozy, but what they have in common is that they are deeply connected to their communities. They love where they live. They love the work they do. They were born to do this. It's very important to them. So when a crime happens, crime disrupts the social fabric of a community.
Yes.
And what we've got in the cozy is two parallel investigations. We've got the professional investigation, where law enforcement is charged with restoring the external order.
Yeah.
And then we've got the amateur who, in my view, what she does is she restores the social order of the community.
Okay. I like that.
She investigates using information that is available to her that might not be available to the professionals. She can ask questions. She can see connections.
Yes.
She can go places that maybe they can't.
Yes.
And so I always try to keep a great deal of respect, at least from her perspective.
Mm-hmm.
She respects the professionals. The professionals, they're not always so sure about her. But after a few books, and each of these is at the 5 and 6 book stage, they do understand that she has talents and skills and that she can help them. And so there's still some tension. Still some drama between the professional and amateur investigations. But what that amateur sleuth does ultimately is help the community mend after this event that is so difficult and so unusual, even though there's one in every book.
Right. I always think about that when I'm writing or reading them, and I'm like, how many murders can you get away with in a town that rarely ever sees a murder if there's one happening every other month? And at some point,
that's
your amateur sleuth
that's part of the willing suspension of disbelief. That's one of the things we have to ask our readers to trust. When they come to the real towns that inspire us, they're going to be safe.
Right. Exactly. Unless Jessica Fletcher's there. If Jessica Fletcher's there, you're totally not safe.
Just don't invite her over for dinner.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't. Terry Moran, our friend who writes the Jessica Fletcher books, is a lovely woman, and you would be delighted to have her over for dinner. But Jessica, I don't think
not
so.
Jessica.
You do point out an interesting challenge, and it is true of both the urban cozy as well as the small town cozy. And I will say about the urban, it's kind of a community within a community, and that's what makes the market such an ideal place for that. You can't always kill someone. You have to choose your victims and your killers with care. It can't always be local. Sometimes the tension is between locals. Sometimes it's between outsiders who come into the community. Maybe they're here for an event and they bring the tension with them. Or sometimes there's a clash between the outsider and the insider.
Right.
So
right.
Those are basically the three options we've got, don't you think? If you've got a one, I'm happy to hear it.
No, that's pretty much it. And it's interesting. I want to get back to your suspense in a second, but it's really interesting, especially when you have two different series going, at least for me, because I was doing Ivy and Tally at the same time, and now I'm going to be doing Tally and Wit and Whiskers at the same time. Staying on top of the fact that you haven't used that one before is sometimes really hard, because you're like, okay, well, we did the knife in book 2 and I poisoned in book 4, and I mean, I could do a garrote, but do I want to do that? Should I drown them? And so there's some interesting conversations, especially between cozy mystery / suspense. Sometimes with thriller, depending on who you're sitting with, where it's like, I'm running out of ways to kill people.
And you do have to be careful. I highly recommend a chart, a
Yes.
table or a spreadsheet, something like that.
Something.
Mine, this is just me. Mine's color coded, which series
right?
it is. You know,
That's
one
awesome.
series is pink and one is yellow, so that I can remember what were the motives,
right?
What was my dear friend, late editor Ramona DeFelice Long referred to as the VGR, the very good reason to get involved. What's the VGR? What's the motive? What's the weapon? You also want to make sure you don't have too many. You have to watch the gender pairings. You know, you don't want to always be killing women. You want to kill equally. I mean, this is terrible. Here we are talking about killing and methods of killing, and we're perfectly nice women.
We really are.
We really are. The point of this, and there's a local woman who's really sweet, and she says to me whenever she sees me, "How can you write about murder?"
Right.
But I'm not really.
Yeah.
I'm writing about community, and I'm writing about justice, and I'm writing about the things that bring people together.
Yes.
And the murder is the catalyst for all the rest of it. And I always try to remember, and I know you do too, that these are real people, and they have to have scars. They have to be affected by it. Aaron and Pepper don't just blithely pop from book to book. They're affected by what happens. And they always have some personal lesson that they learn about themselves and the community that they're involved with.
See, and those are my favorite ones. There are some out there that, at least previously, that I read years ago, that there really wasn't much of a change between book 1 and 4 in the character themselves. They were always kind of static. They were like the cardboard cutout that's moving around the board. I really do like that more and more that I read currently are definitely game changers for every book. You know, I mean, Jessica Fletcher, with the sheer amount of episodes that she has, you can't change 160 times. You know what I mean? Like that's asking too much. I know Sue Grafton had said once that if she had thought her way all the way through, the fact that there would have to be 26 things that happened to this woman, that she may not have chosen the alphabet, because that's a lot of stuff. And it's a lot of stuff. And then there's also kind of the escalation, because if in book 1 something enormous changes, and book 2, 3, 4 kind of slide by, and then 5 you up it, a lot of times the reader is going to expect that you're going to up it over and over again. And at some point you hit a ceiling and you're like, I can't do anything else to her right now. I don't know.
So sometimes she can't be the focus of that change. Sometimes it's going to be her mother, her relationship with her sister, or with someone she works with. And that's one of the things that I've kept in mind with the Spice Shop books. We've always got Pepper at the heart of it, but each book also brings to the fore one of her employees or good friends. And so we've got their story going on too. For example, in The Solace of Bay Leaves, which is the 5th one that came out last fall, we have always known that Pepper's good friend Laurel's husband was murdered 3 years before the series starts. We didn't know how. I didn't know how. But I knew the basics of what had happened, but I had no idea who or why. I didn't know that. I don't necessarily recommend that as a way to write a book, but it is what I did. And so I got to number 5, and I realized, we're at the 3rd anniversary, because we've come a full year. We're at the 3rd anniversary of Patrick's death, and we need to solve it.
Yeah.
And so we brought Laurel to the fore, and we brought
Okay.
an old friend of Pepper's in, and ultimately we deal with these women's friendships and the
Okay.
deep heart of friendship between women, as well as with Patrick's murder and Maddie's involvement in it, and
Hey,
crumbling building in a part of Seattle that I love, and fun things like
that's
that.
awesome. That's awesome. So when we talk about all of this with Cozy Mysteries, how then are your suspenses differing
Yeah, yeah.
between the
So
two?
I don't have a really great nickel version, nickel definition of suspense to give you.
That's fine.
But what I think of it is our main character is not so much a sleuth trying to solve a crime as she is a woman facing a dire threat in her own life that
Oh,
she must solve. And
okay.
so, because I'm not good at remembering this, I'm going to have to read you the first sentence of the intro just
That's
to tell
fine.
you what Bitterroot Lake is about. And this will illustrate what I'm talking about. When
Okay.
four women separated by tragedy reunite at a lakeside Montana lodge, murder forces them to confront everything they thought they knew about the terrifying accident that tore them apart.
Wow.
Yeah, right?
And I
So,
can
what
see
we
what you
have
mean
here
about the
is,
mood being different.
pardon?
I said I can see then of what you mean by the mood being different, because
Yes,
that's
yes.
not a blurb that you're going to find on the back of a cozy mystery that involves community. It does still involve community. It just comes at it from a slightly different perspective.
It does. It
Okay.
does, because she's got this personal threat that's facing her that she has to solve.
Right.
Our main character is Sarah McCaskill Carter, and she is 47 and newly widowed. When the story
Okay.
starts, she has been widowed for 17 days. And
Oh,
because she's only 47, she never expected that.
of course not.
She lives in Seattle. She has come back to a small town I invented called Deer Park, Montana. And
Love it.
she is living in her, or staying in her family's historic lodge. I love old buildings. I love the historic lodges. And so
Yes.
it gave me a chance to invent one of my own. And this one is called Whitetail Lodge, and it is on Bitterroot Lake, which
Okay.
is actually there really is a Bitterroot Lake in
Oh,
Montana, a tiny little lake without a town, and I just blew it up and created a town there. And
that's
so
okay.
it's kind of it's such a great name. I just
Yes.
really wanted to use the name. I was halfway through the book before I came up with the name, and I had to change the name of the lake and
That's
convince the publisher that that was the name of the book, but they readily went along with it. So
I love it.
Sarah comes back to town, or to this lodge, and she gets there. She's taken the train and rented a car, and her mother lives in town, but she hasn't let her mother know she's coming, because her mother's going to be kind of, I mean, they have a good relationship, but her mother's
Right.
going to want to take care of her, right? And she's not so sure
Yes.
she wants to be taken care of right now.
Right.
The big old lodge might be just the right place. When she gets there, she sees a light on in one of the cabins, one
Oh,
of the guest cabins, and there shouldn't be a light there.
right.
And so she goes down to the cabin, and she encounters an old friend, a woman she hasn't seen in 25 years. And the woman says
Wow.
to her, "Lucas Erickson is dead, and they're going to think I did it."
Oh,
Now, at this point, we, the reader, don't know who Lucas Erickson is, why
Right.
he's dead, why we're going to think that Janine, in fact, did it, but
Right.
Sarah knows. And she knows immediately that this is bad news. And so then we learn about the murder. We learn about a tragic accident that happened 25 years ago. We learn about some threats that are coming to Sarah and Janine and to the two other friends. And we've got the four friends reuniting at this lodge, and there have been tensions between them ever since the events of 25 years ago. And, you know, it's kind of not a spoiler to say that when there's a reunion at a historic lodge or some or cabin or some, when there's a reunion near
Yeah.
water,
Yeah.
it's bad news.
Yeah.
bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to expect that, at least in fiction world. Thank goodness
Yes.
not in real life.
Exactly.
So then when Sarah is digging into some of these threats, and I don't mean to be coy about them, but I also don't want to give too much away.
Yep, no
She
spoilers.
is you got to kind of strike a balance there, right? When you're talking about it. She's trying to help her mother decide what to do with this historic lodge, and so she is cleaning out some things, and she comes across some letters and a scrapbook.
Yes.
That makes sense of some dreams that she has had. And help her to understand some things that she never understood. She dives into a mystery that is more than 100 years old. So we've got 3 levels of mystery here: the contemporary one, 25 years ago, and 100 years ago. And that was a lot of fun.
I bet. So when you do something like that, well, first of all, do all 4 of them have points of view, or is it all in Sarah's point of view?
No, it's a single point of view.
Okay.
Sarah, it is third person. The cozies are all single point of view, first person. So I am in the character's head. In this, we're always with Sarah, but it is third person.
Okay. So when you're putting together something like that with 3 different levels of mysteries, and you said earlier that your different books are color coded, pink and yellow. do you plot? I guess would be.
Yeah, I do. I don't call myself a plotter. I call myself a planner, because for Bitterroot Lake and for the Solace of Bay Leaves, I kind of lost the ability to come up with a complete plot. I knew the end and I knew about halfway, but I didn't know all the rest of it. And it turns out that that's okay. But it also can produce great anxiety for me. Some people write that way. They write by the seat of their pants. That's just not how I think and not how I work. And it could partly be because of a long legal career that I like to see things organized. But the process really isn't that much different, whether you're a planner or a pantser. And for some of our readers who may not have heard the term, we should say what it means is writing by the seat of your pants. I gave a talk to a group of writers once, and I used the term pantser, and it wasn't until I was almost finished when someone asked me, so when you say panther, what do you mean? And I don't think, I don't know why he misheard it, but I had to explain that I was not talking about a large black cat. I was talking about writing by the seat of your pants. There is a large black cat in my household.
Okay. But you weren't talking about him. He's not the one who's writing the book. I wasn't talking about him. No, okay.
So really, we're doing similar processes. It's just that for planners, we do our discovery earlier. We do it not when we are actually trying to write scenes and chapters and complete sentences. We do that. We just organize it a little bit differently.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. I don't do well without a title and without some kind of plan. Even if I have done like what some people call mind mapping, snowflaking, bubbling, whatever, I have to have something to work with. I do have a friend who writes, she says, by the light of the headlights. So as far as she can see down the road with the headlights, which is usually like 3 chapters, she has those 3 chapters kind of sorted out, and then once she gets to the end of those, now she knows what's going to happen in the next 3. I don't work well that way. I do get very anxious, and I find that I go on rabbit trails that I definitely would not have done if I had more in my backlog already, I guess. More on the page for me. Although I will say, it's one thing I don't want to, however, lose my ability to still discover within the book.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you just for people who are listening, so when you're saying that you're planning something, for me that means that like I have the big stuff there, but if something pops out, I don't necessarily say, it's not on my plan, I can't touch it. but
gosh, no.
okay. Yeah, it's so interesting. One of the things that I think I've said in every single one of these podcasts, it never gets old, is
That's true.
there as many ways to do this as there are people doing it.
And
Somebody,
each book is
yes,
different, isn't it? The process is
yes,
going to be different for each book. The book will
yes,
teach you how to write itself.
yes.
Now, I'll give you an
Thank you.
example of that discovery
Sure.
process from Crime Rib, which is the second in my Food Lovers Village mysteries. It
Yes.
takes place at a summer arts festival with a steak grill off
Of course.
contest. And so, of course, it's called Crime Rib, right?
Right.
And
Right.
thanks to the brilliant team at Penguin Random House for coming up with that title.
I love it.
Like you, I like to have a title. It's
Yes.
just that the title I end up with may not be the title that I wrote the book
And
with.
that's okay.
So I knew my victim and I knew my bad guy.
Right.
And I was working away, I think, on the first draft, when all of a sudden I realized that this man would not want my victim dead.
Okay.
In order to get what he wanted, and I knew what he wanted, he would not kill.
Right.
He wanted this man alive and he wanted to humiliate him. He didn't want to kill him.
Okay.
And yet the man was dead. So I had to go back and look in my story for who had actually killed him. And the killer was there all along.
Yes.
I just hadn't made the connections and
Right.
realized that it was Pete, not Gib, who
Right.
killed Drew.
Right.
Because what Pete wanted involved Drew dead. What Gib
Right.
wanted involved stealing Drew's recipe and humiliating
Right.
him in revenge for something that he thought had happened
Yes.
30 years earlier. It's kind of a misperception thing. So he wouldn't have wanted the man dead,
Yeah.
but the real killer was there all along. And these moments of discovery and light bulbs going off are one of the reasons why we like to write, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
They're those moments of insight and discovery that buoy us and keep
Yes.
us moving. It's
Yes.
sometimes said, no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. Well, that was my
Yes.
moment of surprise. And we all have them. Sometimes they're really small.
Yes.
Sometimes they're small, but they do keep us going.
Absolutely.
And they're
Absolutely.
great fun.
And I need those, I think, because I have said before, not necessarily here, but previously, my thought of the cozy mystery also while writing it is that it's a game between myself and the reader.
Yes.
It's a game between me and the reader, because one of us has to make it to the end first. But when we do make it to the end, I want the reader to have said, "Oh, I should have seen that." I do not want them to say, "Who's that? What?"
Right. Right.
Okay, you totally were not fair. And that's one of the things that I definitely pay attention to, is not only who is the killer, but is that something that they could have figured out if they had known ahead of time. Nobody's allowed to go and read the end of the story, though, to do that. I'm just telling you it out there right now. I will know you don't want that. But
there are readers who do that.
I know, and it drives
Yes,
me
there
crazy because I'm like, you ruined it for yourself. Like,
hey, you know what?
whatever.
They bought the book. They get to decide how to read it. They get their own
Absolutely.
experience. of it.
Absolutely. You do.
Just that
you
it
do
seems
whatever you
kind
want.
of unusual to me.
Right. But don't tell me you knew who did it if you read the end first before you read the rest of the book, because
Then you were truly surprised.
I did win. I did win in that one. So but I find it fascinating, like you were saying earlier about, talking about murdering people, and we're perfectly okay with that. I think I was in a chat the other night at a panel, and I think one of the things that really, really resonates with cozy mystery readers, and even people who maybe haven't read a cozy mystery but stumble upon one, is the fact that there's a sense of justice at the end.
Yes.
I think that no matter what the crime, no matter why, no matter who it is, the fact is that at the end, things aren't a whole lot different. But I really like your bringing community back together. Like I think that is something that I've skated around. I just don't know that I'd put my finger on it. And so I learned something today, which I enjoy learning things all the time. But I really like that's I think that's what they're looking for. I think a lot of people
Yes.
are looking to cozy mysteries because, you know, and suspense, because there's an edge of your seatness that brings the entertainment, but then at the end there's a sense of justice or an end game that gets played, and then you feel like you can close the book and it's done.
Justice has been done.
Yes.
And you have learned something.
Yes.
Maybe it was fairly painless,
Yeah.
which is what we want.
Right.
We want you to have learned about a trip on a sailboat with a cat.
Yes.
Or to Pike Place Market.
Right.
We want you to want to know those people.
Yeah.
To eat that food.
Yeah.
To go to that place.
Right.
We want the story to be about something.
Yes.
And then we want to have it all come together and mean something for us at the end.
Absolutely.
With the suspense novels, we've got this threat to the main character, and we want to have both that external threat and that internal threat, that internal anxiety that she's been experiencing. We want that to be resolved too. I mentioned that Sarah is a very recent widow, and so during the course of the book, she experiences a lot of emotion. Grief grief takes on a lot of colors. It looks different in different lives. It looks different at different phases. It looks different depending on how the death occurred.
Absolutely.
And so in Cozies, we are dealing with a violent death, as we are in the suspense. But in this case, we've also got a death of a relatively young man through illness. Right. And so we've got his widow dealing with having college-age children and dealing with this loss and going through all that. And it sounds kind of heavy, and I don't want it to come across that way. But what I do want is when you get to the end, you have an experience of grief, or have had an experience vicariously through Sarah's emotions and through Sarah coming to some sort of resolution, where you feel a resolution too, and where maybe you, the reader, feel like, well, if that happened to me, I could get through it.
Yes. No, and I love that. I love that that's something that you are aware of. It didn't just happen and you were happy that it was there, but that you made a plan to make sure that that was something that was happening. So with the suspense, is it going to be a series, or are they going to be a bunch of standalones?
I think what we're talking about are standalones.
Okay,
there is
that makes sense.
Alicia novel at the publisher. Cross your fingers that they'll want it. And there's a third one spread out on my desk right now. I'm kind of alternating between Leslie books. Leslie writes the cozies, and Leslie is my real name.
Okay.
And Alicia writes the suspense. And I'll tell you where that name came from.
Okay.
My mother died about 3 years ago at 93.
Wow.
So she had a good long life. Yeah. Her name was Alice. And my father often had called her Alicia. And the Beckmans were my great-grandparents, her grandparents.
Oh.
So in Bitterroot Lake, my main character, Sarah, discovers this backstory of her great-grandparents who first bought this historic lodge. They didn't build it. That's part of the mystery, how and why they acquired it.
Got it.
And so she is learning about her great-grandparents. Well, when I was writing, I had the physical image of my own great-grandparents in mind. And so I put a picture of them on my desk, and unfortunately I can't reach it to show it to you right now.
That's okay.
But they were my physical image of Sarah's great-grandparents, even though their stories are completely different.
Doesn't matter.
My family, it does nothing like hers.
Doesn't matter.
I pictured Joe and Cecilia Beckman as Con and Caroline McCaskill. And I thought of them kind of watching out for me and for her as I was writing.
I love doing that.
A lot of people who choose pen names, and you have one as well,
yes.
Choose their same initials. And I knew that that was a recipe for disaster, that I would be sitting across the table from you at a library or a bookstore for a signing, or at my local arts festival
Right.
on the first weekend of August every summer. And I'd be signing a book and I'd be so busy chatting with you that all of a sudden I would forget my pen name and I would sign my real name. So I
Yes.
dropped the L and just went with the AB for Alicia Beckman.
There you go. See, and then
So,
it is interesting. Personally, Gabby Allen comes from the fact that I talk a lot, and Allen, that I like Edgar Allan Poe. I had thought about doing a Misty something. I had also thought about doing something Simon, and I just thought I'm not going to rock that. I for the same reason, and I did actually one of the first book signings that I did. I ended up signing it Misty Simon. So above it, I put Gabby Allen, and then I put parentheses, and I said, "It's me, Misty Simon." I was like, I don't know, make a joke
good
out of it.
solution. Good solution. It will happen again, I'm sure.
Yes.
It's already happened to me, and this book's only been out 4 months.
Yeah, and I'm like terrified of going to conferences and somebody saying, "Gabby, Gabby, Gabby," and I'm like, "Gabby, will you?" Oh, right, that's me. I'm sorry. You're calling me, aren't you? Yes, I know that. But I for the same reason with Kensington, because I was going from more traditional cozy mysteries into a more rom-com mystery space, they wanted the distinction between the two. I do have two separate websites, but everything is very linked because it's the same kind of story but with a different slant. Do you feel like your core story, that you like your voice and the things that make it a Leslie book, or do they still exist in the Alicia book, just with a different perspective?
So that's a good question, and I would say yes.
Okay.
Leslie and Alicia are both deeply interested in many of the same things.
Okay.
There will always be a search for justice. There will always be a focus on women and women's friendships.
Yes.
There will always be a deep connection to the community, whether it is here in Montana or out in Seattle or somewhere else.
Right.
The Leslie books tend to have more humor in them.
Okay.
And because of the settings, they have recipes and a lot more focus on the food. Right. Which is not to say that there isn't going to be any food in an Alicia book, just like there's some in Bitterroot Lake, because yes. I don't trust characters who don't eat.
There you go. Yes. Right. You and me both. Everybody needs to be eating something. Oh, wow. We are almost at 45 minutes. So that went really fast, didn't it? I love it.
It did. You warned me it would.
I told you, and it just does. I just glanced down and I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So it was because this has been awesome. I am so excited to have had you on. I am so excited to be able to talk with you about everything. I do want to make sure that everybody knows where to find you. So where can we find you on social? And then Bitterroot is the most current release that you have out right now?
So all my books are gathered together on one website, lesliebudewitz.com, BUDEWITZ. There is an Alicia Beckman title, and so if you put aliciabeckman.com in, it'll just take you directly to lesliebudewitz.com. It is kind of nice to have one name be a little easier to spell and pronounce, but it's not too difficult. If you are on Facebook, find me as Leslie Budewitz Author. Okay. I'm not currently on Instagram, but I do intend to change that shortly. Okay. So I also blog with, I blog for writers on my own site, but I blog for readers and cooks with the fabulous group of cozy writers called Mystery Lovers Kitchen, mysteryloverskitchen.com. I love your site. And Gabby, you were one of our guests recently. I was. And that was great fun. I blog on the first, third, and fifth Tuesdays, sharing Tuesday with the fabulous Cleo Coyle. We've got some really terrific writers and cooks in our group. There are 12 of us, and so we each take a day of the week, and then we have either guests or or a group conversation on Sundays. So
That's
that's where you
awesome.
can find me online. The books are available through all the usual sources, both independent and the major retailers in both the US and Canada. They are all available in all formats. The
Good.
most recent books are Bitterroot Lake and Carried to the Grave. Bitterroot Lake by Alicia Beckman, my suspense debut. And
Yes.
Carried to the Grave, oh, can I safely pull it forward? This was great fun. I know we're running out of time, but I have to tell you, I
You're
had so
fine.
much fun doing this because it is a Food Lovers Village mystery, but it is a collection of short stories. It is
Oh,
5 contemporary stories involving Aaron and the villagers, and then a historical novella set in 1910 featuring my main character's great-grandparents when they first came to Jewel Bay and opened the Merc.
I
And
love it.
it's somewhat historical in fact. I mean, the setting is historical. The
Right.
mystery is not. My husband worked on, he's a musician, and he worked on a documentary that the local historical society put together on our community. And so I got to know a lot about the logging community and the
Right.
orchardists and the other wild and crazy people who founded this community in the middle of nowhere in 1900. Actually, a little
awesome.
bit before that, and then created this town.
That's
So
awesome.
that was a lot of fun
Oh, I
to
bet.
delve into the history and to take my characters back.
Yeah, that
So
sounds like it would
Carried
be
to the
wonderful.
Grave
Okay.
and other stories.
Carried to the Grave. Okay. So everybody needs to run out and go buy all the books because this was too much fun for you not to go buy all the books. And it's been wonderful talking to you. I love the different things that you do and how you do them. And I have read many of your books and I highly recommend them to anyone. But I have not gotten into the Bitterroot yet. And I think that's going to be next on my auto buy list. It's going to come because I love that kind of stuff. I'm not always as good at writing it because I tend to have the funny and like I would need to figure out how to like curve it down a little bit because I don't think you can be laughing all the way
And that's
through.
a conversation we can have another time.
I know we should do that. I would love to have you back on whenever you're ready. And this has, like I said, this has been great. As I offered at the beginning, if you have any questions for me or Leslie, please let us know in the comment section. I would be more than happy to pass any on to her. And again, thanks for coming and hanging out with us, Gabby. With me, Gabby Allen, with Leslie Budewitz. Out on a limb with Gabby Allen, and I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you so much for being here, Leslie.